And yep, here we are.
Well, I'll leave it to you to kick it off. Have fun.
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
will have fun. So it's great to have Andrew here. One thing we cover a lot at WARC is purpose-driven marketing. And so it's really something that's a fascinating topic. It really gets very, very deep into who brands are, and the better they can express it, the better it hopefully helps the world be. And also, I think it also really, in the best instances, can also help the brand, make money, which is also a goal. Let's not forget. So first, I just wanted you, Andrew, to just tell us a little bit about yourself. How you got to Wolverine, that kind of thing, and also about kind of the scope of where you are in the whole Wolverine brand family, which is kind of a large one.
Yeah, so I lead marketing specifically for the Wolverine brand. So that's brand marketing, retail marketing, digital, social. We have a small creative team. And then we support an e-commerce vertical. So we have them as sort of a separate function in the business. But sometimes it's mistook because our corporation is also Wolverine Worldwide. So we own Merrell is a hiking brand, Chaco, a sandal brand, Sperry, Saucony. So there are 10 of my peers around the company, and I specifically focus on Wolverine.
Yeah. So do you interact with them at all, or that much, or do you kind of stick to what Wolverine's about?
It's a really fun dynamic here, I think, because we do operate relatively independently. So each business unit operates sort of as an independent business unit, but we do connect on a regular basis. So we're able to get sort of the resources of a larger company, but kind of have the flexibility and nimbleness, if you will, of a small company as well.
Yeah. So I know we have some videos that we're going to play at certain points, so please tell me when that is appropriate.
Sure.
But first we'll use words. So what is the brand's mission and values? Because that really, everything extends from those.
Yeah, I mean, when I joined Wolverine 4 years ago, and I'd spent 20 years in consumer packaged goods, so footwear and apparel were pretty new for me. But one of my still favorite books, I think, is Simon Sinek's Start With Why. So I still refer back to that quite a bit. So we were doing a little bit of a branding evolution when I first started. And we ultimately landed on sort of a brand purpose. And in the specific words, we always say that this brand exists to support people who forge their own path and those who stop at nothing to build the future they want. And Wolverine's primary business is work boots, steel toe work boots for skilled tradespeople. We also have a small sort of premium USA made lifestyle business, as well as a bit of an outdoor business, but the core of our business is work. So within that purpose, it's really intended to kind of focus on our core consumer, which is that skilled tradesperson. But we don't say that specifically anywhere. We really tried hard to capture the mindset of those people. So the whole notion of forging your own path, these are people that are sort of taking a career path that is not often supported or promoted as a really viable career path. And then the whole notion of supporting people who build their own future. We've learned a lot about folks in the trades and blue collar workers that they just love the fact that they make things, they can step back and see their work, that they're relatively independent and self-reliant because they've learned how to just figure things out with the types of careers they have. So we tried really hard with our purpose to capture the mindset of those people. But then ultimately too, as we talk about the journey over the course of the next few minutes, we also established what we called a mission because we found our purpose, we kind of came to the conclusion our purpose just wasn't actionable enough. Mm-hmm. So now we really have a mission that we have hanging on the wall right next to our purpose. And it's really around honoring the spirit and tenacity of the American blue collar worker and working to build the next generation of skilled tradespeople. So really honoring and celebrating people that are in the blue collar trades today, but also building the next generation of people coming into those trade careers.
Yeah, so I guess a lot of that is sort of aligned around Project Bootstrap, right? So
right.
It would be great for you to kind of walk us through how Project Bootstrap like began and kind of echoes kind of the mission, the values, and at some point in here, you know, if we should all watch one of the videos, that would be great because I know they really get to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I first joined, I was coming in kind of still like loving this book of Start With Why. So I'm poking around trying to figure out why. Like we make steel toe work boots. So it's a very functional category in a lot of respects. And we had an initiative that was called Project Bootstrap that started 6 years ago. And what it was is we showed up to job sites and we gave every person on the job site a new pair of work boots, and we brought food trucks and we gave them free lunch. But what I couldn't get at first was why were we doing this? And ultimately arrived at a woman on my marketing team. She said, I think we're just saying thank you to the people who don't get thanked often enough. Which I thought was something really interesting. You could see in the video we captured how emotional these people would get when we showed up to say thank you. And at the time we were working with Edelman, our PR agency, who we still work with. And they have a construct where they talk about the overlap of a brand truth, a human truth, and a cultural truth. So Project Bootstrap, and I think we'll get into it more, started as show up and give free boots to people that work on job sites. But what we started to come across, and I think this is where we can go to a video in just a second, is we were starting to read out in the world in media. Wall Street Journal was one of the first articles I noticed that featured a high school girl in Pittsburgh who was an honors student and wanted to be a diesel mechanic. And the entire article was all around how she was being discouraged from becoming a diesel mechanic because she was too smart for that job. And what rest of the article highlighted was that there were more baby boomers retiring from skilled trades jobs than there were young people going into the skilled trades. And it's really, if you think about society, it's a generational thing over the last couple of generations that we've told people, well, go to college if you want to be successful in life. And you see that plumber over there, he's doing that because he didn't have any other options. And what I learned as I got into this business is nothing could be further from the truth of people that go into the trades are doing it because they want to, they get to work with their hands. They don't have to sit in front of a desk and a computer. They're making good incomes. A lot of times they're entrepreneurs, but our society is kind of discourage people from pursuing these careers. And as a result, we're all suffering. When you think about trying to find an electrician to keep your house, it's hard because there's not enough of them now. So all of these conveniences that we enjoy are coming from skilled tradespeople, yet we're telling our own sons and daughters and people in society to really reconsider whether that's the right career path and really pushing people to college as the primary path. And I think that's sort of the cultural relevance that we uncovered and said, that's something that we have to grab onto. So if we want to play a video, the first video is just sort of an overview of kind of what that challenge and opportunity is, but it's also the first time we took Bootstrap from a job site and we went to a trade school because we were still doing free boots, but we wanted to recognize the people that were getting training in the trades and use the free boots as an opportunity to kind of tell this story of the skills gap is what it's called. So if you want to play video number one, if that's possible, it might just give a better sort of overview.
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
You're watching Fox 24 News at 10.
Back here in the Lowcountry at the American College of the Building Arts downtown, students learn to work with their hands and think on their feet. But protecting those feet on the hard floors of a workshop can be difficult. Thanks to a program from Wolverine, that job is a little easier now.
We have been trying to tell this story about the lack of people going into the skills trade. The American workforce and the American productivity is being crippled by the fact that we have got these jobs that are unfilled and we don't have the kids to go into them.
We are down here looking at the school, and we're trying to bring awareness to getting young people into the trades.
When I found the school, I immediately booked a ticket to come down for an open house. And then once I saw the school, I knew.
It was the answer that I didn't know I wanted.
I think there are a lot of people out there at a young age who are trying to figure out what they're going to do with their lives.
Come into the trades. There's a lot of different elements in the trades, from being an electrician, a plumber, carpenter, plasterer, painter. All of those jobs are very rewarding. It's something that you can do during the day, step back and say, I did that.
This is the first year we started to say, let's start to focus on people that are getting training in the trades because we're short of people with skills.
You know, being able to have a spotlight put on you for learning a lost art is kind of cool. It actually lets me know that, you know, what I am doing is important.
That's really that's really great. It just really brings to life kind of what you're talking about, and kind of people find their calling in a place where we are, not usually directed when we're younger. So, so I would just be curious to know, like, how you use this from a marketing perspective and all that kind of thing, because telling people stories is always a really powerful way to make a brand purpose come alive.
Yeah, and that was back in 2017. So like I said, Project Bootstrap started as, let's go to job sites and give out free boots. And the opportunity from a marketing standpoint was, well, the people on that job site loved us after that experience. Nobody else knew what we were doing. And we also, like I said, we're kind of saying thank you, but thank you to trades workers. It wasn't necessarily a cultural conversation. So when we decided in 2017 to go to a trade school, we were still doing the same thing, giving away free boots. But what we saw is, because it was a cultural topic of why don't we have more skilled tradespeople, at least on a local level that day. It's in Charleston, South Carolina. The school is called the American College of the Building Arts. These people are learning old world techniques of like timber framing and blacksmithing. So really aspirational version of the trades as well. And every local media network showed up for that event. And they ran it on every single news segment that day and the following day. So on a very small scale to start, even though we showed up and just gave away free boots again, we started to see that we started to think that we were onto something in terms of, like, this was of interest to our brand. It was interest to the people that we were helping, but it also was becoming a little bit more evident that this could be of interest to people beyond sort of the job site in the school, if sort of done well.
Yeah. So I know since then it has evolved quite a bit, and it's so I'd love for you to walk us through how all these associations with some rather high profile people have come to expand the reach of the message, and probably the resonance of the message as well. So you were talking about Mike Rowe.
Yeah, so what you saw in the video was it was a partnership with This Old House. As part of This Old House, they introduced us to Mike Rowe, who has a WARC scholarship foundation for people that are pursuing training in the trades. So if you know Mike Rowe, he was a host on the Discovery Network for a long time. He's best known for his hosting job on a show called Dirty Jobs, where he just followed people through literally dirty jobs and learned over time that he thought these would be jobs that people just didn't want to get up out of bed in the morning to go to. And he learned that these people found a lot of sort of purpose and value in the jobs that they had. And so that's why he became such an advocate for the trades. So we went from free boots on job site, nobody outside the job site knew what we were doing, to let's go give some free boots to trade schools to tell the story about the skills gap, which was very much a local level. And was still, the headlines were Wolverine came and gave people free boots, which we were trying to get to a purpose that was deeper than giving away free product. So in 2018 and 19, we partnered with the WARC Scholarship Foundation. We still work closely with them today. And every year we do sort of initiatives to generate dollars to fund their scholarship initiative. And then every scholarship recipient every year of the WARC Scholarship also gets a certificate for a pair of work boots from Wolverine. So Mike Rowe really became sort of the preeminent voice on the skilled trades. And so he's been a great partner over the course of time. But then what we found out as we evolved is, while Mike Rowe was a great voice on that topic, he also has a very devoted, specific crowd. And so we were trying to find ways to get this story out more broadly. But the thing that I've loved and learned about really having values so aligned with different organizations is that he then introduced us to Metallica, who had their own nonprofit foundation.
Which is just like, yeah, sure, Metallica.
Right.
So tell us about your association with Metallica.
So they have a foundation called All Within My Hands. And within that, they have various initiatives that are aligned with each of the band members. And James Hetfield's initiative is called the Metallica Scholars Program. So where Mike Rowe provides scholarships to individuals going to trade schools, the Metallica Scholars Program actually provides grants to community colleges as part of a workforce initiative program. but which apparently came about because of some interactions with Micro and Metallica. So we reached out to Metallica 2 years ago and said, what if we made some limited edition sort of Metallica Scholars boots? And we contributed all the revenue from those boots back to the Metallica Scholars organization. So again, it was a way to talk about the skills gap and the value of trade work. And it was a way to do it on a stage that was even larger than Micro, but with also a different audience. So we were able to reach a consumer that was incremental to what the Micro audience was. Again, we still work with Micro. He's still a great partner of ours as well. But we were able to kind of come at it from a different angle in terms of supporting this purpose of inspiring the next generation of tradespeople, and do it from an angle that was unexpected. I mean, what we saw in the media outreach and the media and press that we received was, like you said, nobody could have imagined why a work boot brand and Metallica would be coming together, or Metallica Scholars Foundation would be coming together. So it had an impact in terms of awareness, but it also had an impact just in terms of dollars raised. I mean, to date, we've contributed over $300,000 to the Metallica Scholars Program, and we have more initiatives kind of coming down the pipe in the future.
Wow, that's great. So how do you measure all this? What kind of metrics are you looking for? Because this is not sort of traditional paid media marketing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, in terms of a marketing measurement, we do measure the earned media reach because we have relatively limited paid media budgets with the size of our brand. So we often look at a value of like, what would it have cost us to reach that many people had we done it through paid advertising? So the earned media reach is sort of a metric of success for us. Secondly, I'd say because many of the initiatives that we have going on, and there's maybe a couple of other videos we could play as examples, but we are doing limited edition product to raise awareness, but also contribute dollars towards various organizations. So we'll look at website traffic and product sales as well based on those initiatives. And then we do have long-term brand health metric and trackers in place that we monitor as well to really understand. One of the key metrics we look at as an example is a brand that values me. And that's one thing that we really want to be a leader in our space on, is our consumers recognizing that this brand values me in a way that is better or more unique versus the competition.
Yeah. So, and how is that done over time now that, you're kind of really wed to this mission?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen steady improvement over several key metrics on the brand health, and year over year, we've seen exponential growth on the earned media reach and partners that are interested in working with us. So it's been, I mean, we've learned as we've gone along, and we've had some missteps. So it's been a test of persistence and will as well, but we've steadily sort of improved the impact that we're seeing sort of our mission make on the brand for sure.
Yeah, so I don't know if you're comfortable talking about, a misstep. If you're not, that's fine. Or we could think of it as a learning moment. But obviously you're like, well, that was okay, but this was great. So how, what have you kind of learned along the way? What are your, sort of, if you had to look back, what would be the 5 things you wish you knew, or the 2 things you wish you knew?
Yeah. Could we actually play the number 2 video first, and I can talk about what we did right after that? There was a misstep on our.
Absolutely, that'd be great.
But as a quick intro, when we were working with Micro, we did a limited edition boot with him that helped us contribute almost $100,000 to his foundation. But then we also realized, if you think about the last video, the people that we were talking to, the blacksmith and the timber framer, we kind of realized that the media wanted to hear those individual stories, as it was one learning. So we said, let's recognize some individuals and let's have Micro help us recognize those individuals. So we had an event where we recognized some folks in New York. And that's what this is.
I'm here to talk about the skills gap very briefly, to thank Wolverine for their work helping close the skills gap, and to call attention to the opportunities that currently exist in our country that, for whatever reason, most people ignore. Team Wolverine has done a pretty cool thing by identifying 3 people who have taken the time to learn a skill that's actually in demand. These are the stories we have to tell.
We simply wanted to find a few people that really represent Wolverine and the tenacity and grit that it takes to take a path less traveled. So as a small token of our appreciation, guys, we just wanted to present you all with a few things. And we're also going to present to you today each a check for $15,000 to do whatever you can. Thank you.
For me, I think it just solidifies that like going into the trades was the best choice and the right choice. I get to not only make stuff, but I get to make a difference too, and that's just awesome.
I appreciate it so much, and I'm just proud to represent this brand and everything about it.
We're real people, we're real tradespeople, and I think Wolverine is the same kind of a company. They're authentic.
These are the people who looked around for opportunity where it existed and decided to learn a skill that actually matters.
That's great stuff.
So the first misstep is I was supposed to give these guys a check for $15,000 and talk to them about how it's to get them off on the right foot. And I had a little brand message. And I got so choked up as they were staring at me, I completely lost it and just said, here's 15 grand for whatever you want. So that was the first misstep. But no, what I think the learning that we had the following year, so this was in 2018, is 2019, we said Micro's a great partner, but we want to have our own voice on this initiative and we don't want to be beholden to Mike. So we said, let's continue to work with them, but let's see if we can have our own voice on it. So we did a similar recognition event the following year, and we did it in conjunction with a brewery in Manhattan called Torch and Crown. And we featured a hops farmer, a production manager, a plumber who did high-end sort of draft systems to show how trade jobs can be dream jobs was sort of the concept at the time. And while the people that we were working directly with were super appreciative of what we were doing, it had very limited reach in terms of awareness and earned media reach that year. So in a lot of ways, we had people questioning like, all right, this purpose thing was nice, but we need to move on and really talk about driving the business. But our misstep was that we really did need partners. Like as much as we want to be a leading voice in our space on it, we also need partners that have a bigger voice than us in society and in the world. And so that's where we kind of pivoted back, leaned harder into working with Micro more and more the following year, but also identified the likes of Metallica, and we have future partnerships to come to say, who are the partners that we can find where there's some aligned values on this mission, but also potentially have a bigger and more incremental voice combined with us versus us trying to go it alone.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And I know there are certain things to come that you can't really talk about, but you're continuing to find some important brand partners, right? To extend the reach of the mission.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So we are all about advice at work. You know, giving marketers the best advice they can get. So I'm going to ask you, what advice would you give to marketers that are trying to kind of make good on this concept of mission? You and I talked about it yesterday, how sometimes it's just this kind of add-on, and that's not really where the sweet spot is. It really has to be in the center and core. So what advice would you give marketers who are kind of still struggling with how to make this happen?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say there's probably a couple of things. I'd say the first thing that I always have to remind myself of is, like, especially coming from a CPG background, is while we talk about emotional connections when we're talking about how we connect with consumers, we talk a lot about metrics and ROIs and just facts and data, which we should. We absolutely need that. But I think we also have to remember that much like we're trying to connect emotionally with our end consumers, I think there's also opportunity to emotionally connect with your stakeholders and the people that sort of oversee budgets at the company level and agency partners and employees. Because what I'll say we found as an example on our Bootstrap efforts is when we did a limited edition boot with Mike Rowe, we didn't have any formal contract with him, but he was on an interview on Fox and Friends, on Fox News. And they said, hey, we heard you're doing something this upcoming Labor Day with a company called Wolverine. And he slid back and he took his boots off and he slammed them on the table and talked about it for 2 minutes. And we use that to showcase to people around here, like, look what happens when you have aligned values and you get people really excited about what's going on. I think 2 more examples connecting with that. We also started to see, when this was making its way out into the social media world, we had moms commenting on what we were doing, saying, thank you for validating my son or daughter and their career choices, because so many of my friends have been giving me a hard time telling me that my kids are taking the wrong path. And they just said, I just wanted to thank you for making me feel like a better mother. And we use those comments again internally to say, look at the connections we're making, not only with the end user, but with their family members, which is pretty powerful. And then the last piece that really closed the deal, I think, for us from an emotional standpoint, is we were having a retailer conversation with one of our major retailers. And for the most part, and I think most salespeople are kind of like this, they said, hey, let's keep this brand purpose stuff to a minimum. We got to get the product and we got to get the price. So we showed some of these videos, we talked about our purpose, and the buyer literally had a tear running down her cheek at the end of it. And she said, this is like my 6-year-old son. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, my 6-year-old son told me last week that he wanted to be a builder. And I told him he needed to go to college when he grew up. And she's like, I feel like a bad mom now. Like, I should have told him, like, yes, builders are great things, and let's talk about what you can do to become a builder. And then all of a sudden we talked very little about price, and we talked a lot about product. And it really set the stage in a way that our salespeople, again, quantitative brand health metrics aside, said, wow, we need to start talking about purpose in front of our retailers. We need to set up the brand meetings that way, because it really sets the stage for what our brand believes in. And I'd say the last thing is that that I've learned on purpose is, I've learned, like, you got to make it hurt a little bit. There was a time when we offered this boot to Mike Rowe, or we offered these boots to Metallica. And we could have done, hey, 10% of the profits go towards this foundation. But we really thought, to be authentic and genuine, it needed to be everything. And what happened was, even though we didn't think that was the right decision to make in the moment, it was a hard decision. You had the likes of Mike Rowe and the Metallica Scholars Foundation saying, wait, if you sell this boot for $400, you cut us a check for $400. And we said, yes, because we get these other brand benefits and awareness and reach and everything else. And all of a sudden, for these celebrities, it made it so easy for them to say, I can pitch this, because they are literally not making a penny if I help to sell this limited edition product. So while it hurt going into it, there was just so much benefit for the cause and for the brand and for the celebrity partners alike, that turned out to be a positive kind of move in the right direction.
So it sort of ends up being your media budget, right?
It really does, yeah. That's funny. So we do have there is a place for you to for the audience to put in questions if you have them. One other example I wanted to ask you about was the whole thing with the bourbon makers, and that's just like Metallica. That's not something I saw coming, but it's a really interesting story that's kind of a somewhat different take on, the mission, I think. Yeah, it's quick background, and then I think that would be the last video.
Okay.
We saw through some consumer research a high overlap on our high-end Wolverine 1,000-mile boots. They're $400 USA-made boots. People that buy those boots with bourbons. So we reached out to a distillery called the Old Rip Van Winkle Distillery, which, if you know anything about bourbon, they make Pappy Van Winkle bourbon. It's like the most sought-after bourbon in the world.
Pappy Van Winkle.
Their best known bourbon is a 23-year-old bourbon. So they had to decide what they were going to release this year, almost a quarter of a century ago. So we reached out to, it's Julian and Preston are the father-son duo that run this in conjunction with Buffalo Trace that distills. And Preston said, my demand far exceeds my supply, so I don't really need any promotional help. And my family and I make enough money, so I don't really need any cash as part of this partnership. So let's try to find a way to do some good in the world. So even though it wasn't apparent at the time, we saw it more as a heritage sort of brand building initiative. We said, well, we do work with this foundation called the MicroWorks Foundation. We could contribute the proceeds to the MicroWorks Foundation. So it went from talking about premium boots and premium bourbons, and we switched it to talk about all of the blue-collared skilled tradespeople, the corn farmers, the distillers, the warehouse workers, all of these blue-collar jobs and people that make these super premium goods even possible for the world to enjoy. And again, learned, I think, we can turn a lot of what we do into a cause and an initiative that drives our purpose. So if you want to play video 3, it kind of just gives a decent overview of kind of how that partnership came to life.
Okay, here we go.
For over 135 years, Wolverine has supported the soul of the American worker. We don't have mascots or contrived experiments to showcase the quality goods we make. Instead, we celebrate the everyday heroes that forge their own path. Like when the men and women of the Kentucky bourbon community faced an overwhelming demand for their fine crafted bourbon. Farmers, coopers, mill workers, distillers, some making bourbon for more than 3 generations, had to rise to the challenge without compromising quality or created their own co-op. More corn meant more white Duff. So the Coopers built the biggest cooperage in Kentucky to meet demand for more charred barrels. More barrels meant more storage and a new stack house as good as the ones built a century ago. These men and women stop at nothing to build the future they want. Wolverine will be right there beside them, like we have been, for the next 135. We're not good because we're old. We're old because we stayed good.
So again, one objective of really trying to showcase how skilled trades jobs really can be these amazing dream jobs and viable careers for people.
Yeah, no, that's another terrific video. And again, something that I started, sort of surprising, the Boots bourbon connection was not something that was previous on my radar screen. So, so going back a little bit, was there a moment when you knew with Project Bootstrap that like, we're onto something here? This is really the right path. How did you kind of know that you hit what you wanted to be hitting with this?
I think in terms of us just kind of feeling like we were onto something, I think I mentioned a few of them, of just like when you see moms reaching out and saying, thank you for validating my kids. Or you see retail buyers like shedding a tear over what we're doing and all of a sudden throwing the price book aside and talking about product. Those were moments that I think we kind of said we're onto something that has a connection beyond the products that we make in a really powerful way. And I think that the partnerships, like the fact that Metallica, a brand that's dropping a collaboration right now with Vans actually, and is probably a brand that we couldn't afford to work with, has just been an outstanding partner. And we've got multiple partners, a major tech company, a major automotive brand that we have partnerships coming up with later in this year and next year, that we're just a fraction of the sizes of their business. But because they see what we're doing from a purpose standpoint and they have values that align, we've just been able to sort of generate initiatives and interest in ways that we weren't able to 4 years ago. And it not only is helping us kind of create a purpose internally that people are motivated by, but we're also seeing just strength in not only the brand metrics, but the company in which we keep, in a sense, of people that are interested in working with us, despite us being a relatively small brand in the marketplace.
Yeah, so it's sort of by being, real about yourself, so to speak, right? You're kind of more attractive to partners. I know I'm putting this in like sort of like sexual attraction thing, but there is something to be said about like, this is real, this is authentic. And as a car brand, and God, we can't wait to hear who it is, that there's a level of, authenticity here that really makes this partnership make sense. So actually, I'm leading into a question here from somebody. So how do you promote authenticity within your purpose-driven marketing strategies?
There's one thing. I used to work with a woman at Kellogg, so I think is part of this organization. Her name's Monty Brown, but she came back from a conference, and she kind of provided this concept. She got back from the conference of the notion of, instead of storytelling, we should be doing story doing. Like, instead of telling stories about other people, we need to do things that are stories in themselves, or partner with people and create a story. And so I think this brand and these people have really taken that to heart that I work with. So instead of telling a story about Mike Rowe and all the great work he's doing and having a boot that has his name on it, we're saying we're going to sell these and we're not going to make any money off of them. That's all going towards his foundation. Or instead of telling a story about premium bourbons, we're telling the story about the people that make them, but all of the proceeds, 100%, are going towards scholarships to help more people become coopers and carpenters and distillers and warehouse workers. So I think that's been a big part of how we've tried to like show authenticity, is simply by making it hurt a little bit and being an active part of the stories that we're trying to tell.
Yeah, a lot of the time on WARC, you know, that's kind of what we find with all of the examples we have on the site, because the authenticity piece is so huge. It's another place where people, you know, it seems almost easier to get it wrong than it is to get it right as a brand.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we have one other question, probably our last question. What are the biggest challenges you faced in your career implementing purpose-led programs? And on the flip side, what are the biggest opportunities? Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Yes. One thing I'd say, just to jump back to your question on authenticity really quick, that I think is so important, is when you think about the skilled trades and the fact that not enough people are going into these jobs, there's estimated to be millions of unfilled jobs over the next 5 years. And as we looked at this purpose as well, we said, well, millions of unfilled blue collar jobs is millions of unsold pairs of work boots. So the thing that I really love about this purpose compared to past experiences I've had is, if we don't try to get more people into the trades, we don't have anybody to sell our products to. So I think the notion of connecting purpose directly back to the viability of our business has been a big sort of opportunity for us, I guess, to answer the current question, with our stakeholders, to really highlight that we have to do this to keep our business alive. I'd say biggest challenges is that I think at the surface, with a lot of these things that are driven by purpose, they feel a little fluffy. And for the finance leaders and the non-marketers, there's resistance. I'd say when we keep launching these limited edition products and saying we're going to give away all the money, there's a lot of conversations and a lot of selling that we have to put into that to showcase the other value that we'll get as a brand by being authentic to our purpose. But I think I've learned over time too, some of my biggest sort of successes at an initiative basis with the marketing teams that I've been able to work with have been ones that were met with tremendous initial resistance. And I think I've started to learn, like, what sometimes you know you're onto something when only a few of you are behind it and nobody else gets why the heck you think it's a good idea, is sometimes an indication of like you're onto something that's going to be differentiated in the marketplace. So I think that's been the biggest challenge, is just persistence, like identifying what we believe is going to be a good driver for our business and our brand, but having the persistence, but also the pragmatism to drive it all the way to the finish line.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I wondered if you got questions on these limited edition boots from like, aren't people going to go sell them on eBay? You know, or something like that.
Or just the question of like, how can you do something where you're not making any money? Like, that seems impossible. But you made the mention, Cathy, of the notion of like, well, we write a check to media outlets all the time and they don't give us money back. We have to do marketing in a way that it generates a return. And I think we've made that comparison a lot too, of like, this is an investment that we are doing in a way that we are highly confident will generate a return as a result of the actions.
Thanks. That's great. Thanks so much for being here, Andrew. It was really a terrific session and a great story. So I guess we'll throw it over to Ariel, right?
Yes, thank you both. This was such an incredible, impactful conversation, and I hope that we can see you both on our stage soon.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day. So with that, we will now